The trees in the Whispering Wood had always spoken to one another. Their voices were not like those of humans or even the creatures that dwelled beneath their branches. They were ancient vibrations that traveled through root and soil, messages carried by spores and pollen, stories etched in bark and leaf. For thousands of years, their conversations had continued uninterrupted, a constant symphony of life that ebbed and flowed with the seasons. But now, silence was spreading. It began at the eastern edge of the forest, where the oldest oak stood sentinel. Its leaves had started to lose their luster, turning a dull gray before their time. The oak had not spoken in many moons, and the trees around it had grown anxious. The silence was spreading like a stain, tree by tree, glade by glade. Where once the forest had hummed with whispers, now patches of eerie quiet were forming. Alindra noticed it first. As a dryad bound to the heart of the Whispering Wood, she felt the change like a wound in her own flesh. She was tall and willowy, her skin the color of fresh moss with intricate patterns that resembled tree rings. Her hair flowed like cascades of autumn leaves, changing colors with her moods, currently a worried amber. "Something is very wrong," she murmured, placing her palm against the bark of her home tree, a magnificent silver birch at the center of the forest. The birch's whispers were growing fainter, its responses to her questions becoming sluggish. "The heart of the forest is weakening." A rustle of wings announced the arrival of Thorn, a griffin whose golden feathers gave way to tawny fur where wings met flank. His eagle eyes narrowed as he landed on a sturdy branch above Alindra. "The animals sense it too," he said, his voice a melodious growl. "The deer are restless. The wolves hunt closer to the edges than ever before, and the birds, many have already flown, though it is not yet their season to migrate." Alindra looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. "And what of the council? Have they spoken of this?" Thorn ruffled his feathers. "The council bickers, as always. The centaurs argue for patience, the pixies panic, and the elder sprites insist on consulting the ancient texts. But none have offered a solution." "And what do the griffins say?" Alindra asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Thorn's eagle eyes met hers directly. "We say action is needed, not words. Something is stealing the forest's voice, its very essence. And I fear we have little time to find the culprit." As if to emphasize his point, a sudden gust of wind swept through the glade, carrying with it the scent of decay, unusual for the early summer season. Leaves shuddered and fell prematurely, spiraling down in a premature autumn dance. "The Heartstone," Alindra whispered suddenly, her eyes widening with realization. "The legends speak of it. A stone formed from the first seed that took root in this forest, imbued with the essence of all that grows here. It is said to rest at the core of the wood, keeping the balance." "A children's tale," Thorn scoffed, though his tail flicked with interest. "All tales have seeds of truth," Alindra insisted. "The Heartstone is real. My mother told me of it, as did hers before her. It contains the original song of the forest, the primal magic that allows the trees to speak. If something has happened to it, then finding it could restore what is being lost," Thorn finished, comprehension dawning in his fierce gaze. A soft chiming sound, like crystal bells stirred by the wind, heralded the approach of Pix, a pixie no larger than Alindra's hand. His dragonfly wings shimmered with iridescent light as he hovered before them, leaving a trail of luminescent dust. "Alindra speaks truly," Pix said, his tiny voice surprisingly resonant. "The council has finally agreed on something. The Heartstone must be found. But there is a problem." He paused dramatically, his glow dimming slightly. "No one knows where it is. The knowledge was lost long ago." "Not lost," came a new voice, deep and rumbling like distant thunder. From the shadows between two ancient willows emerged Garan, a massive bear with silver fur that seemed to capture and reflect moonlight, though it was still day. "Hidden." Alindra bowed her head respectfully to the elder creature. Garan was one of the oldest beings in the Whispering Wood, a guardian of its deeper secrets. The silver bear rarely participated in council matters, preferring solitude in the deepest part of the forest. "Noble Garan," she said, "do you know where the Heartstone lies?" The great bear settled onto his haunches, his eyes, pools of deepest midnight, regarding them solemnly. "I know where the knowledge is kept. The Heartstone was hidden at the founding of the wood, its location recorded in the Arbor Codex, which is protected by the Keeper of Secrets." "The Keeper?" Pix squeaked, his light flickering anxiously. "But no one has seen the Keeper in centuries." "The Keeper appears when needed," Garan replied simply. "And I believe our need is now great enough. The forest is not merely falling silent, it is dying." The blunt statement hung in the air between them, heavy with finality. Alindra felt a chill travel down her spine, despite the summer warmth. "Then we must find the Keeper," Thorn declared, "and through them, the Codex and the Heartstone." "It will not be so simple," Garan warned. "The Keeper dwells in the Shadow Brink, the border between our world and the next. And the path there, it is dangerous. More dangerous than letting the forest die?" Alindra challenged. Garan's massive head dipped in acknowledgement. "You speak truth, daughter of the trees. But know this, the journey to the Shadow Brink will test each of you. And even if you find the Codex and learn the location of the Heartstone, retrieving it will require even greater courage. The stone was hidden for a reason. Its power is immense, capable of great good or terrible harm. Then we must ensure it is used for good," Alindra said firmly. "To heal, not harm." "And how do you propose we find this Shadow Brink?" Thorn asked, his skepticism returning. Garan's gaze shifted to the setting sun, now casting long shadows through the trees. "When night falls, go to the Pool of Echoes. When the moon touches its surface, the water will show the way, but only to those pure of heart." "I know the pool," Alindra said. "It lies in the Western Hollows." "Then we have our first destination," Thorn concluded, stretching his wings. Pix darted excitedly between them. "I shall inform the council of our quest." "No," Garan growled softly. "The council's divisions run deep, and there are those who might seek the stone for their own purposes. This task requires discretion, not declaration." The pixie deflated slightly but nodded. "Then who shall go? Surely not just the three of us?" Alindra looked thoughtfully at her companions. "The old stories say that when the forest faced its greatest threats, champions would arise from each of its peoples. Perhaps that tradition should continue. A dryad, a griffin, and a pixie," Thorn mused. "A strange company already. You will need others," Garan said. "The path is treacherous, and the guardians of the Heartstone will not yield easily to so small a group." "Then let us seek worthy companions," Alindra decided. "Those who truly love the forest and would risk themselves to save it." As twilight deepened around them, casting the glade in deepening shadows, a distant howl echoed through the trees. Whether wolf or something else, none could say. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that its fate now rested in their hands. "Rest tonight," Garan advised, rising to his full impressive height. "Tomorrow at moonrise, begin your journey to the Pool of Echoes. I will spread word among the trustworthy. Those who are meant to join you will find their way." With that, the silver bear padded silently back into the shadows, leaving the three companions alone with their thoughts and the weight of their new quest. Alindra placed her hand once more against her silver birch, feeling its faint, faltering pulse. "Hold on," she whispered to the tree, to the forest itself. "We will not fail you." As night fully claimed the whispering wood, strange lights began to appear among the trees, foxfire and will-o'-wisps, drawn by the gathering magic of purpose and destiny. Tomorrow would begin a race against the spreading silence, a quest to find the Heartstone before the last whisper faded from the wood forever. And unknown to them all, eyes watched from the darkness, some curious, some hopeful, and some filled with a cold determination to ensure they would never succeed. Throughout the night, as Alindra communed with her home tree, seeking its counsel and comfort, she could not shake the feeling that there was more to the forest's ailment than a missing Heartstone. Something or someone, was actively draining the wood's power, accelerating its decline. But who would want to silence the ancient voices of the forest? And why now, after so many peaceful centuries? As dawn approached, bringing with it little comfort in its pale light, Alindra made a silent vow. She would find the Heartstone, yes, but she would also uncover the truth behind the forest's fading light. For only in understanding the true nature of the threat could they hope to counter it. The first rays of sun crept through the canopy, illuminating her face with golden light. A new day had begun in the Whispering Wood, perhaps one of its last, unless Alindra and her companions could change the course of its fate. Dawn broke over the Whispering Wood with unusual stillness. No birds sang their morning songs, and the usual rustling of creatures stirring from their night's rest was noticeably absent. Alindra emerged from her silver birch, her leafy hair now a determined deep green. She had spent the night in communion with her tree, drawing strength for the journey ahead. At the edge of her glade waited Thorn, his golden feathers catching the early light. Beside him hovered Pix. The pixie's glow dimmed to a subtle shimmer in the daylight. "Are we ready to begin?" Alindra asked, approaching her companions. "Not quite," came a melodic voice from behind a cluster of ferns. The foliage parted to reveal a centaur, her chestnut flanks dappled with white, her human torso adorned with intricate leather armor decorated with symbols of the forest. A bow of yew wood was slung across her back, along with a quiver of arrows tipped with feathers that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Garan said you might need a guide. Lysara, Alindra greeted the centaur with evident relief. Your bow would be most welcome. Thorn snorted softly. The centaurs decided to involve themselves after all? Lysara's expression tightened. I speak only for myself, Griffin. The herd remains divided on this matter. Some believe we should prepare to leave the wood rather than fight a battle that may already be lost. Leave? Pix squeaked in dismay. But the wood is our home. And home is worth fighting for, came a new voice, deep and gravelly. From the shadows of a massive oak stepped a figure that seemed at first glance to be made entirely of living stone. Craggy and imposing, standing nearly as tall as Alindra, the earth elemental's body was a patchwork of moss-covered rock and rich soil, with small flowers and mushrooms growing from its shoulders and back. Eyes like polished amber gleamed in its roughly hewn face. Brahm, Alindra acknowledged with surprise. Earth elementals were known for their reclusiveness, rarely involving themselves in the affairs of the forest's other denizens. The soil speaks of pain, Brahm rumbled, flexing fingers that ended in crystal-like claws. The roots cry out. I hear them, even if others of my kind choose to burrow deeper and ignore the surface world's troubles. Thorn assessed the newcomers with a critical eye. A centaur archer and an earth elemental. Our company grows more interesting by the moment. And don't forget me. A blur of midnight blue fur suddenly descended from the branches above, landing with impossible grace beside them. The creature straightened to reveal a fox-like being standing on its hind legs, with three bushy tails that swished independently of one another. Clever eyes sparkled with mischief in a narrow face, and a bandolier of small pouches and vials crossed its chest. Nyx, at your service. I believe you, find my talents quite illuminating. A trickstale, Lysara said with a hint of wariness. Your kind are known for pranks, not heroism. Nyx placed a paw dramatically over his heart. You wound me, Lysara. Besides, who better to navigate treacherous paths than one who specializes in trickery? Know thy enemy, and all that. Plus, he added with a wink, I have a vested interest in not becoming the last trickstale in a dead forest. Alindra looked over the assembled group. A griffin, a pixie, a centaur, an earth elemental, a trickstale, and herself, a dryad. 6 champions from 6 different peoples of the Whispering Wood. The Western Hollows are a half-day's journey from here, she said. We should depart immediately if we are to reach the Pool of Echoes by moonrise. Lysara nodded. I know the swiftest paths. I can lead us there while avoiding the areas where the silence has spread thickest. The silent zones are expanding? Thorn asked sharply. Yes, the centaur confirmed, her expression grim. What began at the eastern edge has formed patches throughout the wood. This morning, I found a freshly silent glade not 2 leagues from here. Whatever afflicts the forest, it's accelerating. Then we have no time to waste, Alindra declared. Let us go. As the unlikely company set off through the increasingly quiet forest, Alindra found herself walking alongside Brahm. The earth elemental moved with surprising quietness for one of his bulk, leaving barely a footprint on the forest floor. You said the roots cry out, she ventured. What else did they tell you? Brahm was silent for several paces before answering. They speak of an intrusion. Something that does not belong. Something that drinks the forest's magic like a thirsty beast draining a stream. A creature? Alindra asked, alarmed. Not a creature, Brahm rumbled. An influence. A power. It leaves a taste in the soil like metal and ash. He tapped his chest, where a core of glowing amber could just be seen beneath layers of stone and earth. We elementals know the taste of foreign magics. This one is not of the wood. The revelation troubled Alindra deeply. If some outside force had found a way to prey upon the forest's magic, finding the Heartstone might be only half the battle. They would need to identify and confront this intruder as well. Their path took them through increasingly unfamiliar territories as they followed Lysara's lead. The centaur picked routes that skirted the edges of meadows, followed hidden animal trails, and occasionally cut through dense underbrush that seemed to part at her approach. By midday, the changes in the forest had become impossible to ignore. Entire groves stood unnaturally still, their leaves dull and lifeless despite still clinging to branches. No insects buzzed among the flowers, many of which had closed their blooms despite the bright sunshine. The very air felt thin, lacking the rich scents and invisible life that had always permeated the whispering wood. They paused to rest in a small clearing where a spring still bubbled, one of the few sounds of vitality they had encountered in hours. Pix, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly darted up to hover before Alindra's face. Look at my wings, the pixie said urgently, spinning slowly to display his dragonfly-like appendages. Alindra saw immediately what had concerned him. The once vibrantly iridescent membranes had grown dull, with small patches turning an alarming transparent white. Is it spreading to us? Lysara asked, her tail flicking nervously. We are all children of the wood in some way, Alindra said softly. Its power flows through us, sustains us. If that power is being drained, then we too will feel its loss. Thorn finished, his usual bravado subdued. Nyx, who had been dipping his paws in the spring, suddenly leapt back with a yelp. The water, look, they all turned to see the spring's clear water clouding over, as if invisible ink were spreading through it. Within moments, the bubbling ceased, and the spring lay still, a small, stagnant pool where vibrant water had flowed only moments before. It's happening too fast, Brahm growled, digging his crystalline claws into the earth. The corruption spreads even as we walk. Then we walk faster, Thorn declared, spreading his wings. I'll scout ahead, ensure our path remains clear. Without waiting for a response, the griffin launched himself skyward, quickly becoming a golden speck above the canopy. They continued their journey with renewed urgency, no longer pausing to rest. Lysara set a punishing pace, her hooves finding purchase on terrain that should have been treacherous. Nyx darted ahead occasionally, using his keen nose and knowledge of forest ways to spot dangers before they arrived. Brahm seemed tireless, his rocky form betraying no fatigue. Only Pix struggled, his weakened wings forcing him to perch on Alindra's shoulder for increasingly long periods. Late in the afternoon, as the forest shadows lengthened, Thorn returned with troubling news. There's a zone of silence directly in our path, he reported, landing heavily beside Lysara. It spans nearly a league in diameter. We have to detour far to the north to go around it. We don't have time for detours, Alindra said. The moon will rise soon. We must reach the pool by then. Then we go through, Nick suggested, his three tails twitching thoughtfully. Unless, is it dangerous to cross these silent areas? All eyes turned to Alindra. As a dryad, her connection to the forest was the most profound. I don't know, she admitted. None of my kind have ever experienced anything like this. The silence is unnatural, against the very nature of the wood. But whether it poses a direct threat to us. She shook her head. I can tell you, Brahm said grimly. The soil in those areas is dead. Not just silent, dead. The network of roots and fungi that connects the trees allows them to communicate. It's severed, withered away to nothing. Like the spring, Lysara murmured. Yes, Brahm's amber eyes narrowed. I believe we can pass through safely, but we should not linger. And those of us who draw power directly from the wood, his gaze fell on Alindra and Pix, may feel the effects most strongly. Alindra squared her shoulders. We have no choice. Lead on, Lysara. The edge of the silent zone was disconcerting in its abruptness. One moment they walked through forest that, while subdued, still hummed with some remnant of life. The next, they crossed an invisible boundary into utter stillness. The air went stale in their lungs. Color seemed to leach from their surroundings, leaving everything in muted shades of gray and brown. Even the sunlight, filtering through the canopy, seemed dimmer, as if reluctant to touch this blighted place. Alindra gasped as they crossed the threshold, stumbling as if struck. She felt it like a physical blow. The absence of the forest's song, a melody so constant in her existence that she had never truly noticed it until now, when it vanished completely. It was like suddenly going deaf after a lifetime of music. Alindra, Lysara moved to support her, but the dryad waved her away. I am fine, she managed, though she was clearly anything but. Her skin, usually vibrant green, had paled significantly, and the leaves of her hair had curled at the edges. We must keep moving. Pix had it worse. The moment they entered the silent zone, the pixie collapsed on Alindra's shoulder, his glow flickering dangerously. His light is failing, Nyx observed, concern evident in his usually mischievous features. Without hesitation, Brahm reached out one massive hand. Give him to me. When Alindra carefully transferred the tiny form to the elemental's palm, Brahm cupped his other hand over Pix, enclosing the pixie in a hollow of stone. A warm amber light began to glow between his fingers. My core still burns with the old magic of Earth, Brahm explained. It will sustain him until we reach living forest again. They pressed on through the lifeless zone, their footsteps the only sound in the eerie silence. Even Nyx's usual chatter had ceased. The Trickstale's ears flat against his head as he padded along, his three tails dragging limply behind him rather than their usual proud swish. The crossing took nearly an hour of growing discomfort for all of them, but especially for Alindra. By the time they spotted the boundary where living forest began again, the dryad was leaning heavily on Lysara, her steps faltering. Almost there, the centaur encouraged. Just a little farther. When they finally crossed back into living forest, though living was perhaps generous, given how diminished it had become, the relief was palpable. Alindra sank to her knees, pressing her palms against the forest floor, reconnecting with what little vitality remained. Brahm carefully opened his hands to reveal Pix. The pixie's glow had stabilized, though it remained dim. Slowly, his wings fluttered, and he sat up in the elemental's palm. That was, Pix's voice was faint but determined. That was like dying, a little death. The wood is suffering 1,000 such little deaths, Thorn said grimly, his feathers ruffled in distress. And they, re-spreading. How much farther to the pool? Alindra asked, forcing herself back to her feet. Less than an hour, if we maintain a good pace, Lysara replied, eyeing the dryad with concern. Then let's not waste another moment. They resumed their journey, all of them shaken by the crossing but more determined than ever. The Western Hollows were aptly named. a region of the forest where the land dipped and folded into a series of small valleys, each seeming deeper than the last. Ancient trees grew at improbable angles from the slopes, their roots exposed like gnarled fingers clinging to the earth. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Lysara led them down into the deepest hollow of all. Here, the canopy closed so thickly overhead that it seemed like twilight despite the hour. At the bottom of this natural bowl, surrounded by moss-covered stones arranged in a perfect circle that was too regular to be natural, lay the pool of echoes. The water was mirror still and black as night, reflecting nothing of the forest around it, only the first few stars appearing in the patches of sky visible through the canopy. The air around the pool was different, charged with some ancient power that made their skin tingle. "We here," Lysara announced unnecessarily, her voice hushed with reverence. "Now we wait for moonrise," Alindra said, approaching the edge of the pool cautiously. As they settled around the mystical waters to wait for the moon, each lost in their own thoughts about what might come next, none of them noticed the shadow that detached itself from the darkness between two distant trees, watching their every move with cold calculation before slipping away to report what it had seen. The company had found the pool of echoes. Soon, the moon would rise, and the next phase of their quest would begin. But the enemy, whatever or whoever it might be, was already moving against them, unseen but ever present in the deepening shadows of the dying whispering wood. The wait for moonrise seemed interminable. They arranged themselves around the pool of echoes, each finding their own space among the moss-covered stones. Alindra sat cross-legged at the pool's edge, her fingertips just brushing the surface of the water, though she created no ripples. Thorn perched on the tallest stone, his keen eyes scanning the darkening forest around them. Lysara paced the perimeter, her hooves silent on the soft earth. Brahm had partially sunk into the ground, becoming one with the soil in a meditative state. Pix, still recovering his strength, rested in a cushion of moss, his dim glow pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Only Nyx seemed unable to settle, the trickstail moving restlessly between shadows, occasionally sniffing the air with clear unease. "Something troubles you, trickster," Thorn observed as Nyx passed beneath his perch for the dozenth time. The trickstail paused, his three tails twisting around each other in agitation. "We being watched," he said quietly. Everyone tensed at his words, though none made any sudden movements that might alert their observer. "Where?" Lysara asked, her hand drifting to her bow. "I am not certain," Nyx admitted. "The scent comes and goes, as if carried on currents of air that shouldn't exist down here. It's strange. Not animal, not plant, not elemental. Like nothing I've encountered in the wood before." Brahm said there was an intrusion in the forest, Alindra recalled. "A foreign magic that tastes of metal and ash." "Yes," the earth elemental rumbled, his voice startling them as he emerged from his trance-like state. "And it draws nearer," the soil whispers warnings. Thorn's feathers bristled. "Let it come," he growled. "I would rather face our enemy directly than be stalked from the shadows." "Be careful what you wish for, Griffin," Nyx cautioned. "Some predators only strike when confronted." Further discussion was interrupted by a subtle change in the atmosphere. A hush fell over the hollow as a beam of silver light penetrated the canopy, striking the surface of the pool of echoes. The moon had risen. "It begins," Alindra whispered, drawing back from the pool's edge as the water began to stir. The beam of moonlight hitting the pool seemed to plunge deep beneath the surface, illuminating the black water from within. Slowly, the pool began to glow with a soft silver luminescence that spread outward from the center until the entire surface shimmered like liquid moonlight. Then, defying all natural laws, the glowing water began to rise, forming a column in the center of the pool. The column twisted and shaped itself, taking on a vaguely humanoid form, a being of flowing water and moonlight, neither male nor female, its features fluid and ever-changing. "Who seeks the path to the shadow brink?" The being's voice was like water over stones, musical yet ancient. Alindra stepped forward, drawing strength from the mystical presence. I am Alindra of the Silver Birch. With me stand champions of the Whispering Wood. We seek the Keeper of Secrets, to find the Arbor Codex and learn the location of the Heartstone. The water being seemed to study each of them in turn, its fluid face turning toward each member of the company. When its gaze, twin pools of deeper darkness within the luminous form, fell upon them, each felt as if their very essence was being evaluated. The Heartstone, the being echoed. Long has it slumbered, hidden from those who would misuse its power. The forest dies, Thorn declared bluntly. The trees fall silent. We need the stone to restore what is being lost. Or so you believe, the water being replied cryptically. But seeking and finding are different matters. And finding and using, more different still. It turned its attention back to Alindra. Daughter of the trees, your heart beats in rhythm with the wood. That gives you the right to ask, but not necessarily to receive. Please, Alindra said, we seek only to save our home. The being seemed to consider this. The path to the shadow brink is not a physical journey, but a crossing of realities. To find it, you must first prove yourselves worthy guardians of the wood's power. How? Pix asked, fluttering weakly up from his moss bed to hover at eye level with the water being. In response, the column of water began to change, its humanoid shape dissolving back into the pool. Instead, 6 distinct tendrils of glowing water rose from the surface, one moving toward each member of the company. Each must face a truth, the being's voice explained, now seeming to come from the pool itself. Each must demonstrate the virtue most needed for this quest. Before any could question further, the tendrils of water touched them, reaching out to make contact with chest or forehead or, in Brahm's case, the amber core visible within his rocky form. Upon contact, each member of the company gasped and went rigid, their eyes widening as visions filled their minds. Alindra found herself standing alone in a version of the Whispering Wood she barely recognized. The trees were ancient beyond reckoning, their vast trunks wider than houses, their canopies lost in the mists above. Between them walked beings of pure light, the first dryads, she somehow knew, ancestors so distant they were nearly divine. They sang as they walked, and where their feet touched the ground, new seedlings burst forth. One of these radiant beings approached her, its features similar enough to her own to suggest some unimaginably distant kinship. Child of later days, it greeted her, its voice harmonizing with the songs of the ancient forest. You seek the Heartstone to save what remains of our creation. Yes, Alindra answered, though she wasn't sure if she spoke aloud or merely thought her response. Know then that the stone was formed of our sacrifice, the being continued. The first dryads gave their essence, crystallized their very souls, to create a seed of power that would sustain the wood through ages to come. It was never meant to be used, only to exist, a wellspring of magic drawing power from the boundary between worlds. But something is draining that power now, Alindra protested. The trees fall silent, the forest dies. Yes, the ancient dryad's light dimmed slightly. An old enemy returns, one we thought banished forever. Listen carefully, daughter of my distant daughters. The Heartstone can indeed restore what is being lost, but only if returned to its original place of power. And to do that, one of 2 prices must be paid. What prices? Alindra asked, a sense of foreboding growing within her. Either the stone must be enhanced with a new sacrifice, a life freely given to replenish what has been taken, or the enemy must be destroyed, its power broken forever. The being's light pulsed solemnly. Choose wisely when the moment comes. The salvation of the wood may depend on that choice. Before Alindra could ask more questions, the vision began to fade. The last thing she saw was the ancient dryad placing a hand over its heart, where a glow reminiscent of the moon on water shone from within. While Alindra communed with her ancestors, each of the others experienced their own visions. Thorn soared through storm clouds with a griffin of enormous size who spoke to him of pride and sacrifice. Lysara galloped across star-strewn plains with centaurs who shone like constellations, learning of unity and divided loyalties. Pix floated in a sea of light where ancient pixies revealed secrets of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Brahm sank into the very heart of the earth, where elemental ancestors taught him of patience and timely action. And Nyx ran through shadow realms with the first trickstales, who showed him how trickery could serve truth when used wisely. When the visions ended and the tendrils of glowing water retreated back into the pool of echoes, all 6 companions found themselves changed. Knowledge had been imparted, truths revealed, challenges presented. They looked at one another with new understanding, though none immediately spoke of what they had seen. The pool's surface settled back into mirror stillness, but now a new image appeared on its surface, not a reflection of the sky above, but a map. Glowing lines formed an intricate pattern showing regions of the Whispering Wood. In the far north, in a region known as the Mistwall Crags, a pulsing light marked a specific location. There lies the entrance to the Shadow Brink, the voice of the water being explained, though its form was no longer visible. Seek the hollow thorn, where earth meets sky yet touches neither. Only at twilight may you pass through, and only those who carry a fragment of the wood's true essence will be permitted entry. The map began to fade, and Alindra quickly committed the location to memory before it disappeared completely. As the last glowing lines sank back into the darkness of the pool, the moonbeam that had triggered the entire display withdrew, sliding up and away as clouds passed over the moon above. For a long moment, none of them spoke, still processing their individual visions and the shared revelation of their next destination. Finally, Thorn broke the silence. "The Mistwall Crags," he said. "A harsh journey. The terrain is treacherous, and the Mistwall itself can disorient even the keenest of navigators." "We have no choice," Alindra replied, her voice carrying new resolve. "My vision confirmed what Garan told us. The Heartstone is real, and it may indeed save the forest." She hesitated, weighing how much to share of what she had learned. "But there will be a price to pay. There always is, with magic of this magnitude. A price I am willing to pay," Brahm rumbled, his amber core glowing more brightly than before. "The earth endures, so shall we, assuming we can find this hollow thorn," Nyx added practically. "The Mistwall Crags are at least 3 days' journey from here, even moving at speed. And that's assuming we don't encounter more of those silent zones. Or whatever is creating them," Lysara added grimly, her hand still resting on her bow. Pix, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly darted up with renewed energy. "My vision showed me something important," the pixie announced. "The boundary between our world and the Shadow Brink thins at certain places and times. The Hollow Thorn is one such place, but there are others. Ancient groves where the first trees of the wood still stand, like the Circle of Elders," Alindra exclaimed, hope kindling in her eyes. "It's less than half a day's journey from here." "The circle has stood since the founding of the wood," Lysara confirmed. "If any trees still maintain their full power, it would be those." "Then we have a choice," Thorn said. "The direct path to the Mistwall Crags, or a detour to the Circle of Elders in hopes of finding another way into the Shadow Brink." "Time is against us," Brahm cautioned. The silence spreads with each passing hour. As they debated their next move, Nyx suddenly stiffened, his ears swiveling sharply to the right. "There," he hissed, pointing toward a dense thicket at the edge of the hollow. "Our watcher returns." All eyes turned to where he indicated. At first, they saw nothing in the darkness. Then, a pair of eyes reflected the faint starlight, eyes unlike any natural forest creature's. They glowed with an inner light that shifted from red to purple to a sickly green, set in a face hidden by shadow. Lysara had her bow drawn and an arrow nocked in one fluid motion. "Show yourself," she commanded. The eyes remained fixed on them for another heartbeat, then disappeared as whatever creature bore them retreated silently into the forest. After it, Thorn cried, wings already spreading. "No!" Alindra grabbed his tail feathers, stopping him. We can afford to separate or be led into a trap. We know our path now. That's what matters. Reluctantly, Thorn folded his wings. You, right, but I must like being spied upon by servants of our enemy. At least now we know for certain there is an enemy, Lysara said, slowly lowering her bow but keeping the arrow nocked. Not just some natural calamity befalling the wood. This changes our plans, Alindra decided. We can risk the longer journey to the Mistwall Crags, not when we being tracked. The Circle of Elders is our best hope. We can reach it by morning if we travel through the night. Through the night? Pix squeaked. But the forest is dangerous in darkness, even in normal times. More dangerous still to delay, Brahm countered. I sense the corruption spreading beneath us even now. By tomorrow, there may be no clear path anywhere. Then it's decided, Alindra said with finality. We make for the Circle of Elders. If Pix's vision is true, we may find another way to the shadow brink there. If not, then at least we'll be closer to the Mistwall Crags than we are now. As they gathered themselves to depart from the Pool of Echoes, each felt the weight of destiny settling more firmly upon their shoulders. The visions had given them guidance but also warnings. The path ahead would test not just their courage and strength, but their wisdom and their hearts. And somewhere in the darkness of the dying forest, eyes with unnaturally shifting colors watched and waited, belonging to a creature that served a power determined to ensure the Whispering Wood would never speak again. Night fell completely as they left the hollow behind, moonlight filtering through the canopy in scattered silver beams that did little to illuminate their path. Lysara took the lead, her centaur eyes better adapted to darkness than most. Nyx kept pace beside her, his keen nose and superior night vision making him an ideal scout. Thorn had offered to fly ahead, but Alindra insisted they stay together. Being observed had made her wary of separation. The Circle of Elders lies to the northeast, Lysara explained as they climbed out of the hollow. There's an old path that should take us most of the way there. If it hasn't been swallowed by silence, Brahm rumbled from behind them. The earth elemental moved with surprising grace for his bulk, each step careful and deliberate. Pix, having recovered somewhat from their earlier ordeal, fluttered between them, his glow providing islands of dim light in the darkness. I've never been to the Circle, the pixie admitted. My people consider it sacred ground, not to be visited casually. As do mine, Alindra said. The elder trees are the firstborn of the forest, ancient beyond reckoning. They remember the time before the Whispering Wood had a name, when the first seeds took root in virgin soil. And you believe they might offer another path to the shadow brink? Thorn asked, his skepticism evident. The pool showed us one way, through the hollow thorn, Alindra explained. But Pix's vision suggested there might be others, where the boundaries between worlds grow thin. If any place in the wood stands close to that boundary, it would be the Circle. They found the path Lysara had mentioned, a narrow trail barely visible among the underbrush, marked occasionally by stones carved with symbols so weathered they were nearly illegible. As they followed its winding course, Alindra brushed her fingertips against the trees they passed, seeking connection. What she felt disturbed her deeply. The song fades, she murmured to no one in particular. Even here, far from the silent zones we've seen, the voices grow fainter. We're winning the race against silence, though, Nyx observed, his three tails swishing thoughtfully. No new dead zones in our path so far. Small mercies, Lysara replied grimly. They traveled in tense silence for a time, each lost in their own thoughts. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, the usual night sounds, insects, nocturnal birds, the rustling of small creatures, noticeably diminished. Only the occasional hoot of a distant owl or the scurrying of a rodent in the underbrush broke the unnatural quiet. After they had walked for perhaps 2 hours, Nyx suddenly froze, his sensitive nose twitching frantically. That scent again, he hissed. The watcher from the pool. It's ahead of us now. Everyone tensed, hands moving to weapons or preparation for magic. How far? Thorn demanded, feathers bristling. Not far. Nyx's ears swiveled forward. It's not alone. Before anyone could respond, a haunting cry echoed through the trees. Not quite animal, not quite human, a sound that raised the hair on the back of their necks. It was answered by similar cries from different directions, surrounding them. Ambush, Lysara said flatly, drawing an arrow from her quiver. The tip began to glow with a soft blue light, illuminating their immediate surroundings. In that magical illumination, they caught glimpses of movement between the trees, darting shadows that seemed to flow rather than run, occasionally resolving into vaguely humanoid shapes before dissolving back into darkness. What are they? Pix asked, voice trembling as he retreated to hide in Alindra's leafy hair. Shadow dancers, Brahm growled, his crystalline claws extending. Servants of dark magic, they should not exist in the Whispering Wood. Our magic naturally repels them. Unless that magic is being drained, Alindra concluded. They, redrawn to the weakening of the forest's power. Explanations later, Thorn snapped, as one of the shadow dancers slithered closer, revealing itself more clearly. The creature was nightmare-like in its wrongness. A humanoid form composed of what looked like black smoke given partial substance. Where a face should have been, there were only those unnaturally colored eyes, constantly shifting in hue. Wispy tendrils extended from its body like fingers or perhaps tentacles, reaching toward them with predatory intent. Lysara released her arrow without further hesitation. It flew true, striking the shadow dancer squarely where a heart would be in a natural creature. The shaft passed through its smoky form, but the glowing tip caused the darkness to recoil and partially dissipate, like mist burning away in strong sunlight. The creature emitted a shrill cry that hurt their ears, then retreated into the shadows. They can be hurt, Lysara said with grim satisfaction, already knocking another arrow. But not killed, I think, not so easily. More shadow dancers emerged from the darkness, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Thorn roared a challenge, rearing up on his hind legs before charging one of the creatures, talons extended. His attack connected, claws raking through the smoky form and dispersing parts of it, but the shadow simply reformed moments later, seemingly undamaged. Physical attacks are useless, the griffin snarled in frustration, backing away as the shadow dancer reached for him with those eerie tendrils. Nyx had retreated to the center of their group, frantically digging through the pouches on his bandolier. Need something with light or positive energy, the trickstale muttered. Shadow creatures hate those. Brahm had sunk his crystalline claws into the earth and closed his eyes in concentration. Suddenly, the ground beneath two of the approaching shadow dancers erupted, roots bursting upward to entangle the misty forms. The creatures writhed and struggled, their substance becoming temporarily more solid as they fought against the natural magic of the living roots. That's it, Alindra realized. They, creatures of anti-life, the opposite of the forest's magic. Pix, the pixie poked his head out from her hair. Yes, your light, pixie dust is pure forest magic. Scatter it at them. Understanding dawned on Pix's tiny face. He darted upward, then began to fly in rapid circles above their heads, releasing a stream of luminescent dust that drifted down over their group and toward the encroaching shadow dancers. Where the glowing dust touched the shadows, they hissed and recoiled, their smoky forms becoming ragged and unstable. But Pix's power was limited, his light already dimmed by the forest's decline. The protective circle of dust he created extended barely beyond their immediate group. We need more light, Lysara called, firing another glowing arrow that temporarily drove back one of the bolder shadow dancers. Alindra closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself, connecting to the essence of her dryad nature. She was a child of the Whispering Wood, born of its magic, sustained by its life force. Even as that force diminished around them, some reservoir remained within her, stored in the very fibers of her being. Stand close to me, she instructed the others, her voice taking on a resonant quality unlike her usual tones. As they gathered around her, Alindra raised her arms above her head. The patterns on her moss-green skin, intricate whorls that resembled tree rings, began to glow with a soft emerald light. The leaves of her hair stirred as if in a breeze, their colors intensifying from amber to a brilliant gold. The light spread from her body outward, encompassing their small group in a sphere of protective radiance. The shadow dancers shrieked in unison, a discordant chorus that made their teeth ache. The creatures retreated from the light, but did not flee entirely, hovering just beyond its reach like vultures waiting for weakness. "I can't maintain this indefinitely," Alindra warned, the strain evident in her voice. "We need to move." "Which way to the circle?" Thorn demanded of Lysara. The centaur pointed with her bow. "That direction. Perhaps another 2 hours at normal pace. Then we move together," Brahm decided, keeping Alindra and her light at our center. They began to advance as a tight group, Alindra's glowing form at their heart. The shadow dancers paced them, occasionally darting forward to test the boundaries of the light before being driven back. It became a tense, slow-motion dance through the darkened forest, light and shadow, life and anti-life, neither able to fully overcome the other. As they progressed, Alindra felt the strain of maintaining the protective aura. Each step became more difficult, the glow around her gradually dimming. Her connection to the forest's magic, already weakened by the spreading silence, was being further taxed by this continuous exertion. "Alindra?" Pix noticed her faltering first, concern in his tiny voice. "I am managing," she replied, though her breathing had grown labored. Sensing weakness, one of the shadow dancers surged forward, its tendrils breaching the edge of the fading light. Thorn reacted instantly, his talons slashing at the intruding darkness, but this time the griffin cried out in pain as his claws passed through the shadow. For where they touched, frost formed on his golden feathers, a bone deep cold that burned. "Don't let them touch you," he warned, retreating with a pained wing flap. The shadow dancers grew bolder, pressing closer as Alindra's strength waned. Their circle tightened, though shifting eyes fixed hungrily on the companions. "We won, make it to the circle at this rate," Lysara said grimly, firing arrows in rapid succession to drive back the most aggressive shadows. But her quiver was growing dangerously light, and each arrow could only temporarily disperse the creatures, not destroy them. Nyx, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the running battle, suddenly sprang forward. "I have an idea." The trickstail dashed between two approaching shadow dancers with remarkable agility, narrowly avoiding their grasping tendrils. "Nyx!" Alindra cried in alarm as the trickster disappeared into the darkness beyond their protective circle. For several tense moments, they heard nothing but the eerie rustling of the shadow dancers as they closed in. Then, from somewhere ahead in the forest, a brilliant flash of light erupted, followed by multiple smaller flashes in quick succession. The shadow dancers nearest to the display recoiled instantly, their smoky forms shredding at the edges. "This way," Nyx's voice called from the direction of the flashes. Quickly, while they disoriented, Lysara took charge, positioning herself behind Alindra to support the weakening dryad while Thorn and Brahm took the flanks, guarding against the temporarily retreating shadows. Together, they rushed toward Nyx's voice, following the path cleared by the trickstail's mysterious light display. They found Nyx standing in a small clearing, his paws stained with some glittering substance, several of his pouches noticeably emptier. Around him, scattered on the forest floor and hanging from low branches, were what appeared to be small crystals that glowed with a pulsing light. "Lumina seeds," the trickstail explained with a touch of pride, gesturing to the glowing crystals. "Rare and expensive, but worth every coin in moments like these. They repellent to creatures of darkness." Indeed, the shadow dancers lurked at the edges of the clearing but seemed unable or unwilling to approach the glowing seeds. For the moment, at least, the companions had found respite. Alindra sank gratefully to the ground, her own protective light fading as she released the strain of maintaining it. "Quick thinking, Nyx," she acknowledged, her voice weak. But these won't last forever either. Long enough for you to rest a bit, Nyx replied, examining his remaining pouches with a critical eye. They got enough for one more display like this, should we need it. What exactly are these creatures? Lysara asked, keeping her bow ready as she watched the shadows lurking beyond the clearing. You called them shadow dancers, Brahm, but what are they really? The earth elemental's amber eyes glowed solemnly in the crystal light. They are antithetical to the wood's magic. Beings from the spaces between worlds where light and life cannot reach. In ancient times, when the barriers between worlds were less defined, they would sometimes slip through. But the founding of the Whispering Wood, with its powerful natural magic, sealed those gaps. Until now, Thorn concluded, the draining of the forest's power has weakened those seals. Yes, Brahm agreed, and more than that, I believe they are drawn to us specifically because we seek the Heartstone. Whatever enemy drains the wood must know of our quest now. All the more reason to reach the Circle of Elders quickly, Alindra said, forcing herself back to her feet despite her exhaustion. We can afford another confrontation like this. Can you go on? Pix asked her worriedly, hovering near her face. Alindra nodded, though her usual vibrant color had not fully returned. I must. Nyx collected what few unused Lumina seeds remained, tucking them carefully into a pouch. I'll scatter these as we go. They won't create a barrier as strong as this clearing, but they might slow our pursuers. They set off again, moving as quickly as Alindra's condition allowed. True to his word, Nyx occasionally dropped one of the precious Lumina seeds behind them, creating small pockets of light that kept the shadow dancers at a wary distance. Though the creatures continued to follow, they did not press another direct attack. The forest grew gradually denser as they traveled, the trees more ancient, their trunks wider and their bark more gnarled with age. Though still affected by the spreading silence, these elder trees retained more of their vitality than those they had passed earlier, their whispers faint but discernible to Alindra's sensitive perception. We're getting close to the circle, she announced, drawing strength from the ancient presences around them. The elders still speak, though their voices are weakened. As the first hint of dawn lightened the eastern sky, they crested a gentle rise and beheld their destination at last. The Circle of Elders lay in a perfect, bowl-shaped valley before them. 12 massive trees arranged in a perfect circle, their species indeterminate and perhaps unique in all the world. Each trunk was easily the width of a small house, their bark silvery white and seemingly illuminated from within. Their branches reached skyward like arthritic fingers, intertwining high above to form a natural dome. Even in the fading night, they could see that the circle had not escaped the malady affecting the rest of the forest. The inner light of the elder trees pulsed irregularly, like the heartbeat of a dying animal. Patches of their silvery bark had darkened to gray, and many branches stood bare of leaves. Yet despite these signs of distress, the circle still exuded power, a tangible aura of ancient magic that washed over the companions as they approached, refreshing their spirits after the long night's journey. The shadow dancers won't follow us here, Brahm observed, looking back at the dark shapes that had indeed halted at the edge of the valley, unwilling to approach the circle despite its weakened state. They made their way down into the valley, their weariness temporarily forgotten in the wonder of approaching such ancient beings. As they neared the circle itself, Alindra instinctively took the lead, her connection to the trees making her their natural ambassador. At the edge of the circle, she paused, raising her hands in a gesture of reverence. Great elders, firstborn of the Whispering Wood, we come seeking guidance in the forest's hour of need. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a tremor ran through all 12 trees simultaneously, a shiver that sent a cascade of silver leaves drifting down around the companions. The air within the circle seemed to thicken, becoming almost liquid with magic. Voice, the trees responded in unison, the word not heard but felt, resonating within the mind of each member of the company. You bring war to our sanctuary, Dryad daughter. Not war, Alindra replied respectfully. Salvation. The forest falls silent. The trees lose their voices. We seek the Heartstone to restore what is being lost. The Heartstone is not meant to be found, came the response, tinged with what might have been sorrow. It was hidden for the safety of all. With respect, elders, Thorn interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Alindra. Safety is no longer served by hiding. The forest dies around us. What good is protecting the Heartstone if there is no forest left for it to sustain? Impertinent griffin. The trees admonished, a rustling of branches suggesting something like a chuckle. Yet you speak truth. The balance shifts. The ancient enemy returns. What enemy? Lysara asked. They encountered shadow dancers, but they seem more symptom than cause. The trees fell silent for a time, as if debating among themselves what to reveal. When they spoke again, their collective voice carried new gravity. Before the Whispering Wood, there was another power in this land. A being neither alive nor dead, neither spirit nor flesh, but something between. The Hollow King, they named it, for it fed on emptiness and silence, growing stronger as life retreated. When the first seeds of our kind took root, the wood's magic naturally opposed the Hollow King's power. A war was fought, unseen by mortal eyes. The Dryads and other magical beings allied with us, and together, we imprisoned the Hollow King between worlds, in the furthest reaches of the Shadow Brink. And now it's escaping, Alindra concluded, pieces falling into place in her mind. The Shadow Dancers are its servants, sent ahead to prepare its way. The veils between worlds thin, the elders confirmed. The Hollow King reaches through, draining magic to strengthen itself for return. The Heartstone was our greatest weapon against it, a concentration of pure life magic that repelled its influence. But using the stone required great sacrifice from our allies. The first Dryads crystallized their souls to create it, Alindra said softly, remembering her vision at the Pool of Echoes. You know this? The trees seemed surprised. Then you have been granted ancient knowledge indeed. We were told by the Pool of Echoes that we must reach the Shadow Brink to find the Keeper of Secrets, who guards the Arbor Codex containing the Heartstone's location, Pix explained, fluttering forward. But our path to the Mistwall Crags is long and dangerous, with the Shadow Dancers hunting us. We hoped you might know another way. Again, the trees communed silently among themselves before responding. There is another path, one known only to the elders. At the center of our circle lies a doorway, a direct passage to the heart of the Shadow Brink. But it can only be opened at the moment when day and night are perfectly balanced. Dawn, Brahm rumbled, looking at the lightening sky visible through the dome of branches above. Which approaches even now. Not this dawn, the trees corrected. The true balance comes only at equinox, when day and night stand equal across the world. The equinox? Lysara exclaimed in dismay. That's months away. The forest won, survived that long. Not months, the elders replied. Hours. The autumn equinox falls today, at sunset. The companions exchanged startled glances. In their focus on the quest and the immediate dangers facing them, they had lost track of the broader passage of time. Then we'll wait here, Alindra decided. The Shadow Dancers cannot enter your circle. We'll be safe until sunset, and then use your doorway to enter the Shadow Brink directly. There is risk in this path, the trees warned. Our doorway leads to the deepest part of the Shadow Brink, closer to the Hollow King's prison than you would otherwise venture. And our power to protect you once you cross over is limited, especially in our weakened state. It's a risk we must take, Thorn declared. Better a direct confrontation than this slow death by 1,000 cuts. As they discussed the implications of this new path, a strange sound began to echo through the circle, a distant but approaching drumbeat that seemed to reverberate through the earth itself. Brahm's crystalline claws dug into the soil as he listened intently. Something comes, the earth elemental announced grimly. Something large, and not alone. From beyond the valley's edge, where the shadow dancers still lurked just out of sight, a new figure appeared, tall and gaunt, clad in armor of what appeared to be polished obsidian that reflected no light. Its helm concealed its features entirely, but for a pair of those same color-shifting eyes they had seen in the shadow dancers, only larger and more hypnotic. Behind this armored figure marched what could only be described as an army of shadows, hundreds of shadow dancers moving in perfect, unnatural unison, their misty forms partially solidified into mockeries of armored soldiers. Though they stopped at the valley's edge, their commander, for such the obsidian armored figure must be, continued forward, approaching the circle with measured steps. "You cannot enter here," the elder trees proclaimed, their collective voice now audible even to ordinary ears, shaking the very air with its power. "This ground is sacred to life." The obsidian figure halted just outside the circle, its shifting gaze surveying the companions with cold calculation. When it spoke, its voice was like shards of ice scraping against stone. "Sacred ground weakens with each passing hour," it observed, gesturing to the graying patches on the elder's silvery bark. "My master's influence grows, while your resistance fades. Soon, there will be no sanctuary left in this dying wood." "Who are you?" Alindra demanded, stepping protectively in front of her companions. "What master do you serve?" The figure's helm tilted slightly, as if amused by her defiance. "I am the voice of silence, herald of the Hollow King. And you, little dryad, are meddling in affairs beyond your comprehension." "We understand enough," Thorn growled. "Your king drains our forest to fuel his escape from imprisonment. We won't allow it." "Allow?" The voice of silence's laughter was like breaking glass. "You have no power to allow or prevent what comes. The cycle turns. Silence falls. The Hollow King rises. It is inevitable." Written in the spaces between stars before your forest drew its first breath. Lysara had quietly nocked an arrow, her aim trained on the obsidian figure. "Nothing is inevitable while we still stand." The voice's attention shifted to the centaur. "Oh, but you will not stand for long. The Hollow King knows of your quest for the Heartstone. Even now, his servants search every corner of both worlds for it. And should you somehow reach it first..." The helmet turned back to Alindra. "Are you prepared for the sacrifice it demands, daughter of trees? A life freely given. Are you willing to pay such a price?" Alindra felt cold at the realization that the enemy knew the details of her private vision from the pool of echoes. "How do you know of that?" "My master sees much from his prison between worlds. The shadows are his eyes, the silence his ears. Your every move, your every plan, echoes to him across the veil." Before anyone could respond further, the voice of silence raised a gauntleted hand, pointing directly at the center of the circle. "The doorway you seek will not save you. When you enter the shadow brink, you enter my master's domain. He will be waiting." With that ominous declaration, the obsidian figure turned and walked back toward its army of shadows. At the valley's edge, it paused and looked back once more. "Consider surrendering the forest peacefully," it called. "The Hollow King is not without mercy. Quick silence is preferable to slow agony, is it not? Think on this while you wait for your precious equinox." Then, the voice of silence and its shadow army seemed to melt into the tree line, disappearing as completely as if they had never been there at all. Only a lingering chill in the air evidenced their passing. Inside the circle, the companions gathered close, their expressions grave. "The enemy knows our plans," Lysara said quietly. The voice of silence confirmed it. "They're actively searching for the Heartstone as well. And they know we need the equinox to open the doorway here," Pix added nervously. "What if they attack before sunset?" "They cannot enter the circle," Brahm reminded them, though he looked troubled. "Even weakened, the Elder's power holds them at bay. For now," Thorn said grimly. But the voice spoke truth about one thing. That protection weakens with each passing hour. All eyes turned to Alindra, who had grown unnaturally still after the voice's departure. Her gaze was fixed on the center of the circle, where the doorway supposedly lay hidden. "Alindra," Nyx prompted gently. Are you all right? The dryad turned to her companions, her expression troubled. The voice knew about the sacrifice, the price the Heartstone might demand. That was from my vision at the Pool of Echoes, which I shared with none of you. The Hollow King sees through shadows, Brahm recited. If shadow dancers observed us at the pool, then they saw our reactions during the visions, perhaps even glimpsed the visions themselves somehow, Lysara concluded. Which means they know everything we know, Thorn added darkly. And possibly more. A heavy silence fell over the group as they contemplated this disadvantage. The sun had now fully risen, illuminating the circle of elders with morning light that did little to dispel the chill left by the voice of Silence's visit. We can offer you sanctuary until the equinox. The elder trees spoke again, their collective voice gentler now. Rest, recover your strength. You will need all your courage for what lies ahead. Thank you, elders, Alindra responded with a respectful bow. We accept your generosity with gratitude. As her companions began to settle in for the long wait until sunset, finding comfortable spots among the massive roots of the elder trees, Alindra walked slowly to the center of the circle. There, in the heart of their formation, was a small clearing where nothing grew, just bare earth inscribed with faint, spiraling patterns that might have been carved by roots or perhaps by more deliberate hands. This was the doorway they would use at sunset, their direct path into the heart of the shadow brink, and the most dangerous approach to their goal. The voice of silence had promised the Hollow King would be waiting for them. Alindra had no doubt this was true, as she contemplated the spiral patterns, gently tracing them with her fingertips. A new understanding settled over her. The vision at the Pool of Echoes had spoken of two possible paths, either a sacrifice to empower the Heartstone, or the destruction of the enemy. Until now, she had hoped they might somehow avoid both, finding some third option that the ancient dryad had not foreseen. But the voice of Silence's confidence had shaken that hope. The Hollow King had been imprisoned, not destroyed, by the combined might of the first forest beings. How could 6 companions, weakened by the forest's decline, hope to accomplish what their ancestors could not? Which left the other option, sacrifice, a life freely given to replenish the Heartstone's power.